Impostor syndrome. As you can probably tell, my voice is still a bit funny because I'm only just coming out of not feeling very good for the past 2 weeks straight. But I have things that I want to talk to you about and discuss. So I've been doing a little research, and a topic that I find quite interesting / I wanted to look into it further because it is something that I feel like I experience, and I know a lot of people around me have experienced, and that's why I wanted to make this video about imposter syndrome. So if you don't know, imposter syndrome is the experience of feeling as though at any moment you're going to be exposed to be a fraud. So it happens a lot in academic settings, so throughout school, university, any form of education, but it also kind of applies to anything that is like achievement oriented and based, because this person, if they have success, will not feel like that success is down to them and their own abilities or their own intelligence. They will believe that it is just kind of blind luck or something outside of their control, and that they can't trust that their success is coming from them and that it will stay, and then they are constantly worried that at some point everything will go wrong and everyone will look at them and realise that they've been faking it the whole time. They have been pretending to be good at what they do, or to like convince people enough to get good grades or anything of that sort. So the term was coined in the 1970s by two women, Clance and Imes. I'll put their names here so that I can write them on screen for you so you can see their full names if you're interested in the people that first coined the term imposter syndrome. And they basically conducted a study amongst high achieving women, and basically found that they figured their achievements weren't based off of their own merit, and that they were afraid of being exposed as a fraud and not good enough to be doing what they're doing and achieving so highly as they were. And it was a concept originally thought only really to affect women, or at least they only looked into it in regards to women in the beginning. And as it became more and more understood, they looked into the gender effects of this experience as well, and people tended to think that more women would experience imposter syndrome than men. But like as time has gone on, they basically found that this is an experience kind of felt by anyone and everyone really, and not just women but men as well. But I'll go into that a little bit further in a little bit. So like I said, it kind of comes about from having to conduct achievement-based tasks. So say you're in school and these tasks will be, you have an assignment that you need to get in by next week or whatever, say. That will be given to you, and somebody with imposter syndrome would react to this task being given to them by either over-preparing or procrastinating. So if this person was then to over-prepare, they would be in a state of panic, really, or feeling like they have to put in so much work, ridiculous amount of work in excess really of what they need to be putting in order to get the result that they want, hence the over-preparing. And they will feel like they have to try very hard, otherwise they're not going to get the result that they want. And when this task is then submitted and they've received feedback, if that feedback is positive, as it often is, then the person will attribute the positive result from the work they put in as, the person will consider it only because of how hard they worked and not because of their intelligence or their methods in like constructing the piece of work as required in specific circumstances. And then if we go on to the person who might react to the task by procrastinating, they will feel like, yes, they're in the situation where they've done tasks before and achieved highly. They know that positive feedback does come to them sometimes, they don't want to face the task for fear of failure. So they will put it off and then end up cramming and rushing the result in the last few days or whatever to get the thing in. And if they then have submitted this task and get back positive feedback, they will attribute that success only to blind luck, which is kind of the prevailing theme. Is more often than not, people with imposter syndrome will think that the good things have come to them through blind luck and not through anything that is good about them as a person. So they are worried that, hi, my cats are confused that I'm filming in the living room because I haven't done that for a while. Excuse me, you're on my phone. But hey, they're hanging out for this video. Yeah, so someone with imposter syndrome will have this positive feedback coming in because they are a high achiever and they have merits that make them achieve highly, whether that be intelligence or something else. And then that positive feedback will come, but they will discount it and explain it away and not take it on as something to feel like is their own. You know, they can't really feel like they can take the success on as their own. Individuals with imposter syndrome will be haunted by a perceived lack of ability, basically, and they will believe that they could be revealed as a fraud at any time and that they will lose everything that they have because it is not something that they have a tight grasp on. So, like I said before, it's kind of historically been thought of that women experience it more than men, and I kind of think that that is to do with things like societal expectations. So as I looked into this further, I kind of found that marginalised groups or historically ostracized groups of people, things like that, people who experience racism or sexism or anything of that sort, will be more likely to kind of feel this imposter syndrome because they have always found that to be considered on the playing field with, say, white, cisgender, straight men, they need to work even harder and harder to match up to them, and that is what makes them experience imposter syndrome, because the expectation is that they won't achieve, so they feel like they have to prove themselves over and above to match up to people who don't have that sort of discrimination in their past, if that makes sense. I know I'm not completely communicating myself very well, but I'm trying, and I'm hoping you're understanding what I'm getting at. So, like I said, women experience this more than men, I would say, because of sexism, and men were more able to get their places in universities, get their places in high-paying jobs, all the way back hundreds of years ago, and women only recently have been given more of those rights, so they feel like they have to prove themselves more. On the other hand of the coin, what is it called? Affirmative action? Yes, I also found that in this day and age, people, say like women of colour, will question the means by which they got into their prestigious university or whatever it is, because they will feel like it is not based off their own merit or their own like glowing personal statement, whatever it is that usually makes a university think that a student is appealing and should come to their establishment. They will feel like, oh well, it's not because I'm smart, I'm not really smart at all and I don't really belong here. But they had to pick a few black women, otherwise they wouldn't look like they were representing racial diversity, you know? And like, I know that's a bit of a touchy subject, but it's a thing that happens. I feel like affirmative action is a thing that happens, and my cats are fighting. But yeah, whether or not someone is really, really smart and deserves to be there just off their own merit is like irrelevant. Whether or not the establishment is choosing to pick that student or whatever context this is in off the basis of something about their looks or about having to prove something for themselves, it's irrelevant, because these people are just more likely to feel like they are not good enough because of that history, you know? Which is, it's very, very sad, obviously, that society has shaped people in this way, and that people like that still suffer at the hands of it, if in different ways than which they used to, but it's still a thing, is what I mean, and that's just kind of crazy. What have I written? I'll read this out just to give you exactly what I found. There seems to be a link between ostracized groups and the prevalence of imposter syndrome. They tend to believe that they have more to prove against societal expectations, i.e. women of colour say it will affect people differently, say if you're like African American or Asian, because of the different public perceptions of them. So I think what I read somewhere was that either it will mean that they just don't feel good enough, or say an Asian woman got into a role and that kind of viewpoint that she might not be good enough is less a thing associated with that ethnic origin, but on the other hand of the coin, that makes that person feel like they're less able to ask for help when they need it, because they're just expected to be good enough already, if that makes sense. I hope it does. So this also says that imposter syndrome kind of exhibits in women in a sense of women are more focused on performing. They feel like they have to perform highly to make sure that they can be viewed on equivalence with, say, men or whatever. And in men, the imposter syndrome kind of exhibits more in a sense of they are afraid of failure. So again, that's probably just another thing that arises out of imposter syndrome, is people are afraid of failing. And because I guess to be exposed as not good enough to them is what failure is. So as a continuation, this guy called Miller alongside this guy called Kasberg, which I'll put their names here, I think they did a further study, and a quote from them is that experience of sexism and racism make it much more difficult for women of colour to break through barriers of higher education. So yeah, like the long and the short of it there is that people that have more barriers placed on them than others in the way of their achievements are more likely to experience things like they just don't feel good enough, no matter how good they're doing, and like how, you know, how intelligent they are and all the good things that there are about them. They just can't recognise it. And yeah, you know, that glass ceiling and all that. So yeah, so some of the things that it kind of relates back to are cultural aspects of things. So different cultures operate in different ways. You have religious families. Say for example, if in your culture say it's the sort of culture whereby women are generally more expected to be stay-at-home mothers and housewives and look after the house and do all of that, then a woman in higher education might have her family telling her like, why are you in university or whatever when you should be working on your womanly duties. You know, they're gonna feel like they don't belong. And that's kind of like, again, another one of the overarching feelings is that a person with this sort of experience is that they'll feel like they don't belong somewhere where they have earned the right to be there, you know? And I feel like I experienced this phenomenon. And I'm not saying that to say that I am a high achieving person or I am intelligent, because I tend not to think very much of myself. But like, one of the things that I have, you know, factual evidence for is that I went to a university that is quite highly ranking in my country in the subject that I did, and the subject that I did is like notoriously very, very difficult to do and to finish the degree, and I've done that. But from the first year being there, I always felt like I didn't really belong, and that I must have gotten into that university by some form of mistake, because it didn't make sense, because I wasn't good enough to be there, and I felt out of place. And as well, I guess there's the other element that I can relate to this, in that I am a female, and the subject that I was going into is very, very male dominated. So you could say that one of the reasons I might have been accepted onto the course, rather than like my general abilities, is because I'm a woman and they need to try and get more women into STEM subjects. so that might be why they took me, even if I wasn't good enough, you know? So these are all the sorts of things that I think about, and I know that like plenty of other people also think about them too. Even some of my male friends on the course, who I see very much that they're very, very smart people, they get very good grades, they do well, they still find themselves worrying that they're not good enough to be where they are, and yeah, they question their success. And I think it harks back to, you sort of feel like the success that you've had is just due to blind luck. They will say that I just got lucky, this isn't something that is mine to feel good about, if that makes any sense. I've seen it in myself, and I've seen it amongst the people that I've been to university with, male and female. A thing that I think people might not think about as much is that it kind of relates to more things in your life than just academics. So I read a specific article that related imposter syndrome to social anxiety. Again, something that I kind of can shed light on as someone who has suffered with social anxiety for the longest time. And in that sense, it's more a case of, okay, if I talk about it from my personal perspective, say I'm in a social situation that I'm not 100% comfortable with, but I'm around people that are my friends, and these are people that will say they like me and will say that they want to hang out with me. You know, they're interested in my company, they're interested in so anything that I might want to discuss with them, my company, whatever the hell. It's just a social situation amongst people that have no reason to dislike me, and I really don't have any reason to believe that they would dislike me either. But in those social situations, I feel like I have to put on a persona of being a normal person. So I will try to, you know, act like I'm comfortable, act like I'm not worried about them hating me or about them thinking bad things about me. I just try to act like I'm normal and like I'm chill, and I'll talk about things. But all the while kind of feeling like this is a mask, and I'm afraid that that mask will be exposed as being fake, and then all these people around me, say my friends, will realise I'm a fraud and they won't like me anymore. So that's, you know, it's the same kind of overarching, like the core feeling of it, of feeling like you're going to be exposed, and that the good things that you have, that you're just not deserving of the beneficial relationships that you've built with people. Yeah, and you just feel like you're faking it. So it isn't just academics that people feel imposter syndrome for. And if you have something like social anxiety or anxiety in different causes for it, maybe watching this video and learning about imposter syndrome as a whole will help you kind of think more about how your anxiety manifests, you know, and how it's just a twisted thing in your brain rather than something that means you actually have any reason to doubt yourself, you know. So some of the like proposed combat mechanisms for imposter syndrome, this is kind of like harping back to the Clance and Imes studies. They suggested that what people kind of really needed is like group therapy. So what helps is to just talk about your feelings, talk about what you're experiencing, and know that other people also are experiencing the same things. And together you can sort of pick apart what you're feeling, which bits of it are rational and which ones are irrational, as in like which bits are founded by fact and which are founded by just feelings. And you can figure out more whether this is your brain tricking you, or whether you have, yeah, like I said before, any reason to doubt yourself. It's like a key thing in the therapy towards rectifying imposter syndrome is reframing. So you might have a particular thought about, oh, I'm scared I'm going to fail, or I don't want to do this because I know I'm not going to be very good at it. And you instead focus in on that thought and you reframe it to be, say, well, what are all the really good things that I could get out of this experience? And, you know, spin it in a positive light, because then you're taking the focus off of your self-doubt and anything that brings your self-worth into the balance. Instead, you're focusing on the experiences that you can have and the positive things that you can take from situations, regardless of like any competitive aspect or any perceived, you know, possible failure. So yeah, reframing is a good thing. Yeah, basically, to combat things like this, we need to learn how to recognise our own self-worth and self-values and, you know, build that up rather than questioning everything so much, you know. So, another thing that I kind of found was this woman called Dr. Young. I think it was in 2012. She subcategorized imposter syndrome into 5 categories. So we have the perfectionist, which I believe is fairly self-explanatory in the sense that, like, its basis is perfectionism. You feel like you have to be perfect all the time, and that if you are anything less than perfect, then you're going to be exposed as a failure, blah 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 blah. Big thing in imposter syndrome is perfectionism, so that's one kind of brand of it. Then you have the Superman, Superwoman kind of version, which is founded in as someone who will push themselves and, you know, be a sort of workaholic. This harks back to the over-preparation side of things that I discussed at the beginning. Then we have the soloist, which is one that I feel like really resonates with me. Is this person will feel like they have to do everything by themselves and that they cannot ask for help, because if they ask for help, then that will be seen as weakness, and then people will see them for the not so good at the job kind of person that they are. So for me, throughout university, I did find it particularly hard to ask for help from any of my more intelligent friends, because I was afraid of them, like, laughing at me and thinking, like, that's a stupid question, Fion, or, like, why the hell don't you know that already, blah 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 blah. And then they would see me as, you know, a poor student, and they wouldn't like me for whatever reason. So there's that one. There's the natural genius, which, you know, is based on the fact that if you're kind of someone who was considered the smart one growing up, or the smart one of whatever, people expect things to just come easily to you. So again, you're sort of not wanting to show any signs of weakness because everyone has painted you in this natural genius format, so you can't be anything less than that. And then we have the expert, which, I mean, similarly is one in which, like, people will expect you to know the most about your subject, and then you become obsessed with knowing anything and everything there is to know about what you're considered an expert in. And then, you know, you might just be learning too much too quickly, and you're working too hard because you're just trying to prove yourself to everyone, basically, because you have this title of expert. But those were the subcategories that Dr. Young kind of put out there, and that was me poorly trying to explain them. But the next thing I'll just discuss is the fact that there are probably way more celebrities and very successful people or well-known people than you would realise that have suffered with this and have, like, been quoted feeling this way. So I'll get up some of the things that I found on here, and then we'll try and wrap this up, because I feel like I don't know whether I'm really communicating myself properly anymore. So I don't have a quote here, but John Steinbeck, very famous novelist, he experienced it. There's a quote from someone here that I feel like puts it really well, that says, "There are an awful lot of people out there who think I'm an expert. How do these people believe this about me? I'm so much aware of all the things I don't know," which I feel like is quite poignant, and kind of relates to one of the 5 forms that I said before. Emma Watson, has experienced it. She's quoted saying, "I walked down the red carpet and go into the bathroom. I had so much makeup on and these big fluffy full-on dresses. I put my hands on the sink and look at myself in the mirror and say, who is this? I didn't connect with the person who was looking back at me, and that was a very unsettling feeling." So yeah, she's just saying that like everyone's painted her as this pretty perfect, successful actress woman, and that kind of builds up so much expectations on her, and this viewpoint that she thinks, like the picture that she thinks people see of her is not the real her. The COO of Facebook, Sheryl Sandberg, says that she didn't feel like she belonged in Harvard University, and she's clearly a very successful person as a COO of Facebook. But she's quoted saying, "Every time I took a test, I was sure that it had gone badly, and every time I didn't embarrass myself or even excelled, I believed that I had fooled everyone again. One day soon, the jig would be up." That kind of just puts it perfectly. Like, I feel like I've rambled on so much, but like, that little quote there is kind of just like exactly how people feel when they experience imposter syndrome. You're questioning everything all the time. You never feel like you've done good enough. Even when, you know, you do see that you have done good, you just feel like, okay, that's me successfully fooling people for a bit longer, but I'm afraid that it's all going to be ripped away and the illusion will subside, you know? That's kind of just exactly it. Natalie Portman, again, someone else who went to Harvard University, she felt like she would have her merit being admitted into Harvard and being, you know, she felt like getting into Harvard for her, and what her fellow colleagues in Harvard would see about her is that she didn't get into Harvard based off of her intelligence, which she's clearly a very intelligent woman, and that must be the reason why she got in. But she was convinced everyone would think that she only got in as a like pretty actress woman with fame, so that's why they took her on. And, you know, therefore, again, she's questioning herself. Anxiety usually comes from perfectionism. The associated stress can distort one's perspective. The key is understanding the internal messages derived from these feelings and then taking steps to change the narrative. What is the primary source of anxiety and what is the social environment? We often feel shame in relation to highly significant others. I don't know who that's a quote from. Aaron Nurick. Not sure who that is, but it kind of puts it well again, and the sort of thought of how you need to turn it around in your head. Amy Powler, I think that's the woman who played someone in Parks and Rec. Maybe. And this is a really good quote as well. It says, "You will never climb Career Mountain and get to the top and shout, 'I made it.' You will rarely feel done or complete or even successful. Most people I know struggle with that complicated super, feeling slighted on one hand and like a total fraud on the other." So yeah, a bunch of famous people experience this, as you would kind of expect as well, because it's heavily derived on people's perceived expectations and feeling like they have a lack of ability from that which everybody else sees them to have, or that which they should require. They don't know. Yeah, they just question everything. They question themselves. They don't trust that they're good enough. There's that sort of feeling. They're just that they're not good enough. So imposter syndrome can occur in various settings. It seems to, like, if you're in a stressful situation and things have been shaken up and changed in your life, like you've come into a new environment, it's an academic setting, a workplace, your social interactions or your relationships, then you're likely to have feelings of doubt. And another thing is that research has shown that there is a relationship between imposter phenomenon and the following factors: family expectations, overprotective parents, graduate level coursework, racial identity, attribution style, anxiety, depression, low trait self-esteem, perfectionism, excessive self-monitoring. Those are just a bunch of things that I quoted from my notes on imposter syndrome. But if you're interested in it as well, I feel like I've rambled on a lot, and I don't... I hope you understood what I was trying to say, but if you're also interested in this and you want to hear more about it beyond what I've discussed in this video, then Google it. There's a bunch of things talking about it. I'm sure you could probably find more famous people and successful people that have felt this way. But on the other hand, know that if you feel this way, there is hope, and you don't just have to accept it as a part of yourself. About 70% of people overall are said to experience feelings of imposter syndrome, which is staggering, actually. Like, why do only 30% of the population trust themselves and believe in themselves and know that they work hard and the things that they get out of it are because of their merits as a person and their abilities? That kind of baffles me, that, you know, so many of us are just filled with so much self-doubt. And I hope that we can learn to do, like I said before, and practice reframing and question the thoughts in your head, change them as much as possible. Again, like, don't try and overwhelm yourself with it. Like, take small steps towards, you know, recognizing the good and the worthwhile in you. But work on it, because, you know, I think you're amazing, and I think you should believe in yourself. Okay? Nah. I'm gonna shut up. I'll try and leave some links in the description. If you want me to talk about this more and maybe more coherently, drop a comment and I'll try and do that. I suppose this can just be sort of a test to dip the toe in the water. If you want more like this from me, then just let me know. But yeah, I know, like, everything about this isn't perfect. I'm not perfect, and but if you like this sort of thing more, then I can do it way more professionally for you. Like, don't you worry. Okay, I'll go. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you soon with another video. What it will be on, I don't know, but I hope you enjoy it anyway. And if you're like one of the new people that subscribed since my last video, or you're one of the people that watched my last video and dropped a like, or whatever, I'm just complete non sequitur, but from the point of the video, but I thank you so much. That really does mean a lot to me. I put a lot of work into the video, being able to talk about all of that stuff, and then film it, edit it, and put it up for you, for the amount of people to be watching it as much as they have so far. It baffles me, and I think it's amazing. I'm, like, overjoyed with it. I didn't really expect anyone to care as much as they have done. But yeah, it means a lot to me that people have liked it, and people are watching it and taking anything positive from it. And yeah, that's all I wanted to do. So thank you so much. I'll see you soon.